Have you not listened to your elders, my friend?
I've listened to the elder, but I don't listen to.
Okay, you have.
Welcome to Right Between the Eyes podcast, a KISS podcast with 3 generations of KISS fans telling you why we love it loud.
What would you say you do here?
Well, look, I already told you. I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand that? What the hell is wrong with you people?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Right Between the Eyes podcast, a KISS podcast with 3 generations of KISS fans telling you why we love it loud. I'm one of your hosts, Rob Myers. Welcome to episode 59. This probably should have been 60. This was such a great episode. You can get a hold of us on all of our social media outlets. We're on Twitter at RBTE podcast. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Right Between the Eyes podcast. You can get a hold of us on Instagram. You can email into the show at rightbetweentheeyes@gmail.com. We're on YouTube. So if you're watching here, hello. And if you follow us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever your podcast catcher is, rate and leave a review of the show. And I'm here with Nick and Nico Caruso doing something that we've been wanting to do, a satellite show. We took our opening act segment and ramped it up a notch with a very special guest in Rick Shew. I just got to read his Twitter. Like, you know, you can put a little blurb of what you are. And I wish I would have read it while he was here. It says, our guest this evening is a longtime podcasting friend from Batman on Film days. His Twitter bio is so good, I'm just going to read it. He's the host of Friends Work Pod. He is a husband, dad, stepdad, hook'em, political BS at left crew politic, and was once a Superman. Yes, you heard it correctly. He auditioned for the role of Superman, and I believe it was for Brandon Routh's Superman Returns movie is where that came from. Our guest tonight is Rick Shew, and he'll be on in just a moment. But what did you guys think about spending some time, a little over an hour with Rick? Nick and Nico Caruso, how are you guys doing this evening?
Doing great, man. I tell you what, it was so fun. It almost felt like we've been friends for 20 years. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we've communicated. The one thing I will say is that, I mean, who knows where the franchise goes if Rick gets that role?
Right. Who knows?
I mean, the universe as we know it, everything could have changed the course. We may have never had all the controversy we have with DC.
Right.
You got a Rick Shew, and then you got probably a sequel, right?
Probably.
Into the Dark Knight stuff. I mean, I don't even want to think about what could have been, Nico. How about you?
Wait till the hashtag for this show that I'm going to give, and when people listen to it, and hopefully he hears this as well, hashtag should have been Shew. Should have been Shew, man. It should have been Shew instead of the Snyder Cut or whatever. Should have been Shew. That's incredible.
We are all comic book fans. Geeks amongst geese. There is a multiverse that I want to visit where Rick Shew is the lead in a Superman movie. Let me say that again. That Rick Shew would one day end up in the CW crossover universe with the Flash and Green Arrow. And let me say, a crossover with the Dark Knight Chris Nolan movie could have happened if only Rick Shew would have been Superman.
Would be a better world. Let me tell you that.
Better world. Well, with that,
and Josh Hartnett would have been Batman.
There you go. Well, we're not going to bury the lead anymore. We're going to kick you over to our discussion. That's aptly titled The Replacements, Rock and Roll. As much as we talk about Tommy Thayer, Eric Singer, Vinnie Vincent, there's a whole other plethora of bands that we all love that have replaced singers, guitar players, drummers for the good or the better. That's what this episode is. And 3, 2, RBTE.
Do like an old-fashioned summit sometime, you know, and get us all together somewhere. I wish we could pick something, you know, Rob, and get some of the guys from BOF and, you know, some of our guys and you know, just kind of the Peter Veras and all those guys that, you know, we've kind of been lucky to meet and talk to and form friendships with. And
it's amazing when you get people in person.
Oh yeah.
You like Zaki Hassan. He and I have podcasted.
Yeah,
together.
He's a cool dude too. I follow him. I don't know him well, but obviously I interact with him on Twitter a little bit.
I've probably podcasted with him as much as anybody. We've sent gifts to each other for our kids. Never met him in person.
That's wild. That's cool.
Have no idea what he smells like. What he,
Yeah.
you know, you know what I mean? I don't even know how tall he is. I don't even know.
That's funny.
You just know him in this height.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were lucky to meet. We were a little fortunate. Rob and Nico and I met at the last Kiss concert here in Rosemont, and it was truly a pleasure to meet Rob. And it's like funny, like someone like yourself, just the daily stuff on Twitter. It's like you feel like you know each other. It's pretty, it's pretty bizarre, you know.
Yeah.
It's like it's so weird.
The best way.
It's like you know.
Yeah, it is. We're on Facebook together too, right?
I believe so. Yeah, I'm not a I don't go on Facebook as much as I used to, though. You know, I probably got to dabble in that a little bit more. You know,
well, for me, Facebook is just, first of all, it's politically, like, there's no politics for me. It's just family, friends, little stuff. Right. Anyway, you know, and this is not my show. I'm not the host, but if I may make a suggestion,
go for it.
I have regretted 5 million times going, why am I not just recording this conversation? And that's what I think.
Oh yeah, no,
I already did.
Right?
Yeah.
You fired it up.
That is one of the biggest things.
Rob does that. Go ahead, Rob.
I will end the show, but I keep recording for a little bit until people are like, okay, I got to get going and stuff like that. But some of our intro conversations early on, I started going, this is good B-roll stuff, or this is just good.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just good. Like I've hobbled podcasts together going, you know what? This is just all of our, I think I did it for an anniversary of one of our shows. So yeah, this is being recorded, whether I choose to use some, all, or none. Maybe it'll be at the end credits. So yeah.
You have your Van Halen 3 shirt on though, Rob, or no?
I do.
There you go.
This is what poked.
Everyone did Van Halen. I'm doing the Police.
I'm just surrounded by a few friends here.
Yeah, surrounded by some friends. Oh, that's cool, man. Cool we're doing this.
Arguably Van Halen's best record.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan. I that album for me, I think I was 16 when it hit, and I was driving, and the song Unchained is, and my son knows it. It's just, to me, it's I mean, no macho stuff or anything like that, but for me it was like a coming of age song. And the whole album is great.
Cool.
Like, So This Is Love and Dirty Movies, Push Comes to Shove,
Mean Street,
Hear About It, Mean Street. It just, so like I live, I'm still basically in the town I grew up in. It's still about 4 blocks away, man. I can still remember coming home, and we had a nice little basement, and dropping that thing on the record player and hearing that, and calling my best friend up, Ray Rotolo, who's still my best friend. I've talked to him today, and just calling him up and like, you had to call somebody on the phone, obviously. And it, just fangirling about this album, how incredibly great this was. But I didn't see this tour. I don't know why. 'Cause I saw my first concert was Styx in 81. I don't know how we didn't see this show. It's weird. I know they came here. I don't know if we were out of town or something like that. We missed it, but yeah, it's my favorite Van Halen album to me. I mean, one is maybe the greatest, but this thing here to me is just, for me, it's the best.
I think it's the best of everybody. I think Michael Anthony's bass lines, even in that record,
everything, the raunchiness, the guitar tone. We talk about it all the time. It's just,
Ross lyrics, perfect.
Oh,
unbelievable. Yeah.
He sounds slick and dirty and kind
Sinner's Swing. I mean, there's just, it's just, wow. It's
David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen are my favorite singer guitar player duo ever.
Yeah, I mean, they're up there for me too. Yeah,
ever. And nothing against Sammy. We'll get into it.
Yeah, maybe Rob, go ahead.
Yeah,
we got some good stuff here.
So
we're cooking already.
I love shows like this, folks. So everybody's hearing this live. Nick and Nico and we will do the intro of the show
later
in post and later. So you are catching the raw part of the show here. So we'll intro it in case I forget. We've got Nick, Nico, and a long podcasting friend, at least for me, back in the days when I had the Robin Everyone Loves a Drake podcast. Ryan Haas had just recently been on BOF and was Batman on Film, and was starting to talk about us a little bit. And one of the first voices I heard say, yeah, get those guys on the show, was the gentleman you are seeing or hearing right here, Rick Shew. I have a great intro for him, but I'll let him hear that later. So that was really cool to go. Somebody said yes to have us on, probably hadn't heard of us, but just sounded so cool. And then being in the podcasting room, if you will, with the whole Batman on Film crew, and then doing a couple satellite shows with you, sir. I am so sorry it's taken so long to do something like this.
Sure.
But like we were talking off mic, Facebook is where we do our family stuff, but Twitter sometimes gets to be what Twitter is. And by celebrating an anniversary of Van Halen 3, and then a few weeks later, Motley Crue 94, Rick was like, dude, we've got to do a show and we've got to do it now. So about a month in planning, I've talked long enough. Welcome to Right Between the Eyes, Mr. Rick Shew.
It's truly an honor. And as a parent myself, let me just say, the two gentlemen here, the dad-son relationship you guys have.
Oh, thanks, man.
And I have to watch myself as I curse like a sailor, but it's effing beautiful.
Oh, thanks, brother. Hey, man, I really appreciate that.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you.
It's just the coolest, man. And I've, Rob and I've talked many times over the years. Great to finally do a show with you gentlemen. And one of my favorite topics, which is just, I don't even know, it's your show here, what the title or theme. For me, we're just going to geek out about some rock and roll.
Yeah.
Amen.
We've been on a Kiss kick, obviously, for a while. That's the course of the show. But doing the last few end of the road shows, it's been all Kiss leading up till the end. Something we like to do is do these opening act segments. Like, okay, we're going to talk about Bon Jovi tonight and go into that. This is even more of that. I think Rick and I were batting back the name of calling the show like The Replacements. And we're going to treat this like a round table for Rick, who may not be familiar. There is no one central topic. The conversation is going to kind of morph and turn. I gave everybody a little homework, like write 9 groups or artists, but we mainly talk about 3. The conversation is going to dictate where we go. But the broader theme was, at what point is a band no longer a band, or at what point did a band bring in a new element because the singer guitar player didn't get along, or the bass player quit, where you were like, it sounds no different. The band sounds great. Or the moment where you went, wait a minute, something is different. Are they still that band, or should they have changed their name? Should they have done something else and hold that entity of what they started? So I'm just going to, let's kick it over to, we'll start with Nico first. I'll put him on the hot seat really quick.
You get Nick, talk about.
Damn, Jesus Christ! I was looking to learn from everyone. I'm going first. I'll say, Rick, it's so cool to finally get to talk to you live in person on a show. We've all texted and chatted a bit on various things. So it's a very cool topic to talk about. So okay, about replacements. I mean, we are a Kiss leaning show. Let's get them out of the way. So here's what I'll say about that is, for me personally, I've only ever experienced Kiss as the current lineup with Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer. Now, when I discovered them, when the Kissologies came out, you've all heard the story, right? And when my dad got me in the Kiss, it was the original 4 guys. So for me, what was always interesting, though, is how the same they feel. And what I mean by that is, we've talked about this on the show a lot. So like, I didn't watch Kiss and all the changing of the aesthetic, the guys coming in and out, right? But we talk about all the time, like Tommy Thayer really does just try to replicate what Ace Frehley does, from the riffs to the outfits and everything like that. So they feel like the same band, even though that's not Tommy Thayer. I do think Eric Singer brings a nice energy because he's younger than the rest, so he still has a lot of energy behind the kid and does some more creative fills and stuff. But they're an interesting band because when they're behind the makeup again, I think it's easier for them to look the same.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, of course, my dream is that I would see the 4 guys one day. Of course, that didn't happen. It's fine. It is what it is. But I just think they're an interesting first one to talk about because I've only ever known them as this new lineup, and yet everything about their show has still stayed pretty much true to how they first started. So they're an interesting thing where we've also said this on a show before too, like how many people went to this End of the Road tour, just like general audience people who wanted to go see Kiss, who don't even know that that's not Ace and Peter, right? Because you really know by the makeup, right? So I would be so curious to hear where you all want to take that one. But that's my 2 cents on Kiss really, is that I know there's 2 different guys, but they do play they don't really play a lot of the songs they wrote together either on those last, 3 albums from the Sonic Boom, Monster. I might be forgetting one. So that's my take on Kiss.
And this will probably be the shortest segment since we're a heavy Kiss podcast. Probably this will be the round one, but we've heard it on the show multiple times. I came in 89. They were out of makeup. Paul and Gene were always saying, nope, we're never going to do it again. You can't pay us enough money. And then, things start happening. I think anytime you become a fan of whatever band that is, you go backwards through the catalog. Some things you may gravitate towards. You go, wow, it's always interesting. That sounds like nothing that I'm listening to right now, whatever that hook that pulled you in. Sometimes the older stuff doesn't gel really well, or the opposite happens. You go, holy crap, this older stuff was way better than what you're currently doing now. So Kiss always had this up and downhill. They didn't take any large plummets, but they didn't reach the stratosphere like a Bon Jovi or what have you. So I think Kiss played this safe space for the last 20 years of like, this is the look, this is the formula, this is what we're doing. Either like it or love it. And like Nico said, the general audience, some of the general audience couldn't tell you who's under the Batman mask. They just know, hey, it's Batman. I'm gonna go watch this thing and enjoy myself for 2 hours and in and out. It's the diehards that are like, what the heck? That is wrong. So I think any band's going to have the detractors, but I think Kiss kind of played that safe space for a while and just coasted out the last part of their 20 years. So that's my take on Kiss.
Rick, go ahead, buddy.
Kiss. So I'll try to be brief here. I will. And if I don't, cut me off. I have a long history with Kiss. I was introduced to them by my older cousin, Stacy. Stacy's a dude. And he had just every Kiss LP and makeup, all of them, Hotter Than Hell, Dress. Everything, Dynasty, you name it. The 2 live albums, Double Platinum, the self-titled debut, etc. And I was obsessed. I was literally obsessed with their makeup, the hair, all the things that made them who they were, the allure, the mystery. Remember how big the reveal was in 1982 on MTV? Yeah. It was crazy. Of course, that was Eric Carr and Vinnie Vincent at that point. And I loved Kiss their whole career. I stood by every great record, every record that was maybe a little bit of a dud. Asylum, for instance, is not that great in my opinion, although Tears Are Falling is on that record, right? Yeah, that's a great song. But in Revenge, that lineup, and Nico, you mentioned Eric Singer. I give him a lot of credit because I think he's underrated in the Kiss legacy because he had made his mark prior to taking on the moniker, if you will, of Peter Criss. And where they lost me, and I even supported them, and I loved what they got back with the original act, although I always will stand by the fact that I think Bruce Kulick was done a little dirty personally. But right, and just an amazing guy. I've never met him, but you can just tell. And I supported the reunion lineup. How could you not? It was phenomenal in 1996, 7.
Yeah. Yep.
Once, and I understand there's some legality things. I understand that things happened. There's some nuance to this. But the moment that Eric Singer and Tommy took on the makeup of Ace and Peter and the characters, they lost me. They just did. To me, it was like...
That's fair.
It wasn't... It just... Like, they didn't have to do that. They didn't do that with Eric Carr. He was the Fox. And Vinnie Vincent was the... what was...
The Ankh Warrior.
He was like
the Warrior.
Yeah.
Like
the Ankh or whatever. Yeah.
Like Eric Singer of all people deserved his own damn. Revenge is one of their best records, period, in my opinion. And he's an instrumental part of that. And so I've not been a fan the last. I will always be a fan. Don't get me wrong, but I haven't supported what they've been doing since that transition. But they will always hold a place dear to my heart. And Cold Gin is one of those songs like Unchained or Livewire by Motley Crue that made me fall in love with not Rock and Roll All Night, not one of their anthems, but Cold Gin. And still remains one of my favorite rock and roll songs, period, of all time. So
that's pretty neat. Anybody that listens knows that Kiss was really my introduction into rock and roll, right? It took me away from Frank Sinatra, the whatever pop was playing on the radio those days, driving around in the car with my mom. So reunion tour, phenomenal time. A concert odyssey in my life. I think I saw 8 or 9 shows on there. Was in the bar restaurant business, got to meet Ace Frehley, got to meet some of their people, got to meet Tommy Thayer when he was really the road manager backstage there. So for me, the continuation of them, I did check out too after the final farewell tour. I was done, but a crazy thing happened. I did not force kiss on my son, but I did buy the videos and played them around the house. And I did somewhat direct him and say, what do you think of this? You know, a 6-year-old little kid, 7-year-old little kid, and he could have easily walked away from it or said it was crazy, but man, he vibed with it. He got into it, and it created a spark in me and rejuvenated them. So I accepted it, because if they didn't continue on, I never would have had this wonderful relationship with my son, to see the band as they are, get to meet people like Rob and yourself. So I'm glad that they did it. But Rick, we had a wonderful farewell concert here that we got to meet Mr. Rob Myers in person, a couple of our other guys on the podcast, and I am at peace with it right now that they're done. Completely. Wouldn't want to really see him again anymore. Not in that iteration, not with the makeup anymore. Like, I am so happy that it's over, but really glad that they did continue on because of my son.
Well,
I can't believe that I saved Kiss. Sounds like I saved Kiss.
So how?
Dude, thanks, Dad. Yeah,
Great.
Follow that up.
Now you just ruined me hating them for the last 15 years.
Yeah,
no. Because there's different motivations.
There's different motivations.
There's some bands. This is what the great thing about this is there's some people that never get to experience the original format of these bands, but they get to see this new version of the group and then go back and discover them. And then there's people sometimes like us that were there from the beginning, enjoyed them, and now you look at them and you're like, they're a parody of who they used to be. So that's why this show is going to be so interesting, because there's so many different takes on it, and nobody's right or wrong.
No,
it's rock and roll. And you know, hey, if I was in a band and I was able to make a living off a few hit singles or off how big I was in the 80s or 90s, I think it's pretty cool myself. I mean, and I'm the first to criticize a lot of these bands and say, oh my God, they're doesn't sound anything like them, or they shouldn't even be up there. There's no original members, but we'll get into that, Mr. Myers.
You know, I don't want to take it on I'll save that for the end. It was funny as I was kind of prepping for the show at work, and you got the little Microsoft Office tab, and it gives you like the weather, and it gives you little bullet points that pop up, blah, blah, whatever. And one of the headings from MSN said 8 bands that are currently touring with no original members. And I was like,
oh, that's pretty cool.
Okay. So I'm going to have to read that. I'll have to dig the email out. But the first one up there was Lynyrd Skynyrd, that there are no original members left in Lynyrd Skynyrd. Now, there have been members of the band that have been there for quite some time, but I was like, oh, I thought, so-and-so was still there. I forgot their piano player's name escapes me, had passed away last year, 2 years ago. He was the last surviving member. So for people to go out to a show to go see Lynyrd Skynyrd going, well, that ain't Lynyrd Skynyrd. Michael Cardelloni from Damn Yankees and Tommy Shaw is playing drums, but the band starts playing the music and you start going, oh, his brother is singing, sounds like the original singer. So I kind of wanted to start there with bands that have managed to replace people successfully that it hasn't really detracted. Now, somebody may have a different opinion on Lynyrd Skynyrd, but that's just the first one that popped up ironically today on this email or this message that I had read. So let's start with Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Well, if I may, because I think this particular band has a theme, or the results of the reaction, I think, is thematic. Fans react a lot differently when people die, especially in time like that.
That's interesting.
So look at Bon Scott and AC/DC.
Yep.
Legendary frontman, great lyricist, vocals. Oh my gosh. And it's not the irony of the fact that the last record he did was Highway to Hell is weird, but it's a great record. And then they turn around and they get Brian Johnson, and they have the biggest record of their career, but fans were supportive because they wanted the band to continue.
Yeah.
And then I know I'm jumping around here, but then you have something like Van Halen that's kind of remarkable that they did that. We can get more into them later. It's a but Roth also, his ego was out of control and he quit. Again, they're like a victim of that. What do? They're supposed to not doing anything. I think that's part of the Leonard Skinner phenomenon, if you will, and the fact that it's the brother, and he was in 38 Special and kind of had his own thing going on prior to that, and he does sound a lot like his brother. But also, I think there are certain bands that have members you can't replace, and others it really doesn't matter, right? And there's actually, you know what I mean? Like if you take the Police, right? As long as you have Sting, nobody gives a shit, right? I mean, as far as the mainstream fans, not hardcore people.
Yeah, not absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Right. Look at Megadeth right now. Dave Mustaine has been touring as Megadeth with various members. No one cares. Billy Corgan's been doing it with Smashing Pumpkins as well.
Yeah.
You know, and just nobody notices, nobody cares. But there's certain bands that just can't do that. Motley Crue couldn't pull that off. They tried a couple times. It was like, nope, has to be these guys for the most part, right? And so I think that's the difference. And I think Leonard Skinner has a little bit of that where most people don't know the main players anyway, so they can be somewhat interchangeable. And the fact that the singer is the brother who was killed, unfortunately, in a plane crash.
Plane crash.
Yeah.
38 Special was great too, though.
Oh, they're great.
Oh man, yeah, great stuff.
Like I'm not particularly a Leonard Skinner fan, but I mean I do know their music, so I fall into that category of someone who, if I saw them or was at a festival or something like that, I wouldn't even know.
Yeah,
but I know the music, right? So for me,
to be a cover band, you're like, whatever.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point too. When the death is early and premature, if you will, it does change the game as opposed to someone who's been around for 20, 25 years and for whatever reason, it doesn't work out. But I think fans are much more forgiving when a member passes away like that. Somebody like in their prime a little bit, it goes away. You know, like you look at like a Queen or somebody like that, you know, when Freddie Mercury passes away, although they didn't really do much, Queen. I mean, after Freddie Mercury.
You had not Roger Taylor, Bad Company.
Oh yeah, but that
Rogers.
Was long. Yeah, but
that was kind of like a one-off here.
But that was years later. Like they didn't really capitalize on it immediately. Like AC/DC's a great analogy because they were so successful, and it wasn't that long afterwards that Back in Black, They Replaced Them came out, and they exploded onto the scene. And there's people that probably don't even know Bon Scott, right? You know, they see our guys singing all those songs, Brian Johnson, and they don't understand that a lot of the early hits, it's just AC/DC to them, you know. So that's a good concept, Nick. I mean, you're young as you are. This was a brilliant segue that you threw to me. One for me personally, because Rick, that's a very thing I've thought about, especially in prep for the show, is the death versus replacements for different reasons. For me, actually, one that ironically kind of where the death felt so impactful to me that I actually haven't been able to listen to the band is the Foo Fighters for me.
And that's a drummer.
Yeah. And
it's a drummer. And I agree with you. And it's a drummer.
And it's insane.
Foo Fighters too. Like that's not for me either. That's your own.
No, I think I got you into them for a bit, which is something I was proud to do. And there's someone else.
I put them up there with anybody. They're as great as
Amen. Especially live. They jam. But I think what was interesting is that like Taylor came along later. Right. He came around 05. And because the Foo Fighters for the longest time they have members, but it's Dave, right? It's Dave. However, Taylor became like the co-lead, and the show is dead. We ended up seeing him like 3 times. Yeah. Taylor comes out and sings. The guy comes out and sings 3 songs, and he sings one behind the kit. The solos are insane. His style of play was so different from those early Foo Fighters records, and he's ferocious.
Yeah.
And then when he passed, they did, and it's no disrespect to Josh Freese, who took over, who's a monster drummer in and of himself. I think it's cool that they picked a guy like that who put in the work for years. He's getting the spotlight now, and they just they didn't even spend that much time off either. I mean, they just got him and kept going. They put out the new record. I know Dave puts together a lot of the record himself, but I see the performances, and it's like, Rick, you were alluding to, like, there's certain members that are hard to replace, and they replaced the drummer, but the drummer happened to be sometimes Dad during that. He takes over, he does his solo, he comes out and sings, and he owns the stage for 15 minutes. And
you're watching.
Real quick. Yeah. Well, they would do a thing where he would get joined by the special guest for a song. So when we saw him, the guys from Cheap Trick came out to sing with Taylor when Dave's on the drums, or when the Struts were the opener.
Yeah.
Luke Spiller came out with him, and you saw how they had that giant the 2-day event for Taylor. How many people came out for Taylor Hawkins? So that's a loss where I'm sitting there going, yeah, they're still going, and he's a guy who came later, but he became, in my opinion, as prominent and well-loved as Dave in the band, and you lose him, and it's like, well, now it's kind of back to the Dave show. And I love Dave Grohl. I think he's one of the coolest human beings of all time, but it's
not
tough.
The same. Not the same.
Can I make a bold statement? And it's really a question, but, and this is going to, I may regret saying it, but I'm gonna put it out in the universe. I think you're absolutely spot on. I would even take it further. I think that his presence, he was sort of the co-lead of that band.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, if God forbid something had happened to Dave and Taylor became the front man, I think fans would have embraced it and said, let the show go on.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I agree with you. I swear to you.
That's how dynamic I think he was. I think that he could have pulled that off. Now, obviously, thank God that didn't happen, unfortunately. I hate that we lost Taylor. Yeah. One of the coolest rock stars of all time. And all the people that came out to play and to honor him showed how effing cool he was, because it was people that were their direct peers. And then it was David Lee Roth. It was Tommy Lee and Nikki Sixx. It was it was everybody. It was some hip hop people. It was country. It was like everybody. Every genre of music came out to rally behind him, not because they love Dave, but because they love Taylor. And he is. I put him up there with the Tommy Lees and Alex Van Halen's of the how many truly marquee drummers have we had? Not many. Neil Peart. That's if you're a drummer, by the way.
Yeah, Copeland from the Police.
Badass drummers, but with all due respect,
not the presence, not like those. Like
the name, they're almost as big or bigger of a celebrity than the lead singer is. In some way.
You know, and I will say this to you too, Rob, because you're a drummer and get your take. But having seen them, I think we saw them 3 or 4 times, Nick. Mm-hmm. Like the reverence that Dave had for Taylor in the live performances, where he's gushing, deferring to him, sharing the stage with him. There's no doubt, Rick, that it was a kind of a leader of the band, right?
Sure.
And so for me, what I've seen, we haven't seen them live without Taylor, but it doesn't feel, it's never going to be the same for me. And I'm not quite the extreme diehard that Nico is, but I just don't feel it. It's a big loss. Like they can't replace that.
Nope.
And, and I'm no slight on Dave or the new music or anything, but I've seen on YouTube and the shows and all that, and it's different. And there's another one that I want you to talk about later, Nico. Don't forget what we talked about earlier.
Oh yeah.
We'll get into that later.
We talked about two. Yeah. We talked about two, so I'll have to mentally try to read you there, Rick. Go ahead.
No, and I was just going to say, because this is such a great point, and I want to tie it into another part of the conversation. You're absolutely right. Now, let's say that, God forbid, and I keep saying this because the man passed away, so that's the worst case scenario, but let's say Dave and Taylor had a falling out, right?
Yeah.
And Dave booted him out of the band. I don't think fans would have responded well to that at all. And I think they would have suffered commercially. I think it would have been a serious problem. The fact that he passed away and it hurt the band so much, and they want to honor him by going on, I think that is part of the driving force of it. It's like he's almost the catalyst for them to continue. That it's almost like, let's do this. Let's continue to support the band. Not even so much that we love Dave or the band per se. Let's do it for Taylor.
To honor Taylor.
And that isn't a remarkable thing for a drummer. And I love drummers. I just mean that's not historically the marquee of a band.
Yeah. I think you would have
It's a great conversation. I just wanted to say that. What a great conversation.
And we've said it before, like being a drummer myself, I could not help but be,
heck yeah.
That's for Taylor.
I forgot I knew that.
But being a drummer, looking through all my modern drummer magazines and stuff like that, I would always see Taylor sticks. This is what he uses. So I was always kind of like, oh, that's what Taylor uses. Oh, okay. I wasn't as connected to the Foo Fighters when I was playing in bands in 96 and 97 out of high school. I was playing like Dave Grohl's parts in the early iterations before Taylor got there. And then bands had changed and moved on. Then I heard Taylor. I was like, oh man, I wish I was playing his licks, but I'm not playing that kind of music anymore. But you would have thought that would have been the nail in the coffin. Dave would have said, that's it. I'm done. We cannot do the Foo Fighters, I think, from the blessing of the family. And as close as those two brothers were, Dave knew I have to carry on because Taylor would want me to do that. And I have such a reason. I was a fan of Josh Freese for many, many years.
Yeah. So he's
seeing him play with Sting and then just the different albums that he's on and him knowing the importance of Taylor. And I just saw an interview with
they loved each other, man.
Yeah. Rick Beato. And he talks about he knows the importance of that drum stool, and I'm trying to honor Taylor's parts. And where Dave's like, let her rip, man. He's like, no, this is what Taylor would do. I have to play this as Taylor would. So I think that has me excited for anybody that's a Foo Fighters fan. Speaking from a drummer, that the drummer sitting in that seat, much like an Eric Singer was sitting in for Eric Carr, going, I know the importance of this, and I'm doing the best that I possibly can. And they didn't get some douchebag behind the kit going, you don't get it. This dude gets it.
Agreed. 100%.
All right, so let's turn. I did want to add one other thing while we're talking about death here. Another band that comes to mind, seeing the reunion show, and I got to see one of the last show of Lane Staley, being in Alice in Chains. And then how his death, and then you could go through like the Scott Weiland's, Chris Cornell, Chester from Linkin Park. Those deaths were so powerful. It halted those bands, and it halted Alice in Chains for quite some time. And then they have Duvall come in, and I think it was a Heart like VH1 special where Alice in Chains got up with Duvall and did Barracuda when they were like, let's try and do this. They put out one album. It's never going to reach the level of where Lane Staley is, but I think that's one of those first bands that was like, can we try and move forward, or do we just have to go? Do we have to do a solo thing? But Soundgarden has a blessing from the family to release the last recorded stuff that Chris Cornell worked on. But can that band continue on? Can a Linkin Park come out and play and do shows like that? So I wanted to talk about that, and we'll get kind of off this somber subject. When you have a death of somebody like that, should that just be the end out of respect, or do you pull a Foo Fighters and go, we at least have to try? Let's go, Rick, let's kick it over to you.
To me?
Yeah,
it's tough. I think obviously it's a case-by-case basis. I think it depends on a lot of variables, like the family, the fans, kind of getting a pulse, the science behind that. I don't know. You do take a Twitter poll, but I think there's some barometers that you could follow. It's tough. I look at Pantera, and I'm from Dallas, and so that's those guys came out at a time, and they were really putting Dallas on the map, and it was exciting to be a Dallas kid. And you've got Pantera and Toadies, and like, what are these great bands coming out of Dallas? It was crazy. We haven't had this in Stevie Ray Vaughan, and most people think Stevie Ray Vaughan came out of Austin because that's where he was discovered, And so and now Pantera's out there touring right now with just Phil,
Phil and Rex.
Yeah, and Rex, to be fair. Yeah, you're right. And that's important to say. You guys, and the brothers are both gone. So should they be touring with the name Pantera? I guess for me, it's one of those things where the fans are coming out and supporting it, and they're honoring their legacy, and they've got Zach Wilde up there. I guess why not? If it's obvious, just a cash cow, and no one, internally is supporting it, family, or I don't know, man, it's tough. I really don't have an answer for that because it's just so damn complicated, and we're talking about people's lives and the relationships with loved ones. I don't know. I will say this: Chris Cornell he hit on all cylinders for me with his solo stuff, which is underrated in my opinion in a lot of ways. I think some of his best songs is his solo work. And Audio Slave was incredible.
Oh my gosh.
Soundgarden's incredible. Just incredible. What a beautiful artist. Scott Weiland did what was the band he did with Slash and Duff?
Velvet Revolver.
Velvet Revolver. Yeah. In fact, when Matt Sorum was playing, I met him in LA at a bar. He was so cool. One of my favorite celebrity run-ins, and he was great. But I think that's part of how you handle that sometimes is maybe honor but change the name. I always thought 1994, that's probably what Motley Crue should have done with John Corabi. That record probably would have done better. Just not call it something else. Tours that, get back with Vince when you guys iron your stuff out and be the band. I'm kind of going all over the place because that's a really hard question to answer. What do you guys think? How do you judge that?
Look at STP. It happened to them twice, right? I mean, it's like you bringing STP up is special for me because when that grunge movement came out, Stone Temple Pilots,
I know that, but you said twice. Who passed away twice?
Well, Chester was
I was going to touch on that. So Chester from Linkin Park.
You almost don't know if you want to be the lead singer.
Oh my gosh, that's right.
Of Stone Temple Pilots.
I forgot about that.
Maybe you don't want the gig as the lead singer of Stone Temple Pilots.
Yeah,
that's why I didn't mean to interrupt you, but feel like twice. That's right. Jesus.
But they were somebody that out of all the groups, Nirvana and Pearl Jam, they were my favorite. The music, I really loved their music, and I took Nico. We went to go see them. And Scott is just dynamic. I mean, he is one of the truly great, like live performers, frontmen that I've ever seen. Now, his story's tragic, the band, because obviously the drug use. And I had met them at my I had the bar in Chicago, and they had come in one night. It was probably, I think it was 98 or 99 when 4 came out. Sour Girl was big. That was the big hit.
Yeah.
And I had a disco, a retro club in the basement, piano bar upstairs, and they were really cool. They were all there, and I bought everybody a drink, and Scott was there. There's a big, bald dude, kind of surly guy, and we're laughing. I go, "Who's that?" I was telling Scott, I go, "Is that your bodyguard?" He goes, "He's the guy that makes sure that I don't have a drink, that I don't do anything, that I just play it straight and all that, And they were really cool guys and stuff. And, I mean, when he passed on, again, you can't replace him. A lot of the guys you talked about, all those groups, but it is a hard question, Rick, because like the music is what's important. And it's the strength of the music that is, I think we forget how that's more important almost than the people that do it or the one part of the band. And as long as they can get somebody to replicate it somewhat, and there's a following, I get that thing too. Is it a cash cow or is it look, those guys need to make a living too, right? I mean, somebody passes away. I mean, you and I were in the restaurant business, God forbid if somebody leaves or whatever, like you kind of go on, you carry on, you pass the baton.
Highest turnover profession in the world, probably.
Right. Exactly. I think that's different than we get in a little bit in the future of some people where then it's the arguments and that stuff and where they split. And then you're almost like, well, why are you still calling it this band when you're not there or whatever there? So I think death is something that, I can't ever fault a band for wanting to continue on when they suffer a tragedy like that. Don't you think so, Nico? Or what's your thought?
Yeah, it's a tough question though to kind of agree with both of you because I think, and then Rob, to answer your question, I think there's times where, and I hate to say this, where like it also works or it doesn't work. I think once again, going back to what Rick said earlier, there's people that feel that you can replace and there's ones that you really can't. STP, Dan, I'm glad you brought it up. because when Scott passed, and I was also a big Linkin Park fan. So when Chester took over, I'm like, okay. I was down for like, and they didn't really know if he would keep doing it or he was just going to do it for that little bit of time. I'm into that. If you could find someone who's kind of prominent, take over for somebody, play some shows, right? Make some songs. And Chester had a not, they're both amazing in their own right, but Chester had a similar vibe, his voice, kind of the scratchiness he would play with. So it worked on a lot of those songs. And unfortunately he passed away as well. Yeah. But then, for other cases, right, it's tough because at that point, like Rick was saying, do you still call it the same band name? You know, at what point does it feel too different? Or at what point is it just Stone Temple Pilots with Chester on tour and these other bands who've lost people or maybe multiple members? Do you even call it the same thing? Or do you call it like the Leonard Skinner tribute going forward, right? Or something like that. I don't know. It's a tough question. Yeah, that's a tough question.
And I was, if I could just say this real fast, because you got my head spinning, and I think you just alluded to something that made me say, what is the meaning of the name?
Yeah.
What is it? Is it just an LLC, or is it just a corporate moniker that people can subscribe to, or does it mean something, right? And that's the $1 million question. But if people are going out and supporting them, like you said, man, like, God bless them. I mean, why not? Yeah. Why not? If people are going out, what's the whole point of this anyway? It's escapism. It's cathartic. It's
right. Exactly.
So if I'm going to go watch Pantera, that's, to be fair, I forgot to release 2 guys there. That makes it a little better. But again, those guys also died. I guess that one's a little bit too personal because I kind of knew the brothers. I knew those guys a little bit, not well, but I knew them well enough. Just, it was weird. And I think maybe that's also part of it is, what does it mean to you personally? And is it about the people or is it about the songs? And then where does that line blur, I guess? I don't know.
It's their logo too, right, Rob? It's that, like, you wear that logo of the band, right?
You're wearing
your mean the same, like when you wear it out. Is it the Police, Journey, the VH logo? It represents everything. But then there are times sometimes where you put the logo on, you're like, oh, it doesn't feel like the logo, the logo's bigger than the band sometimes, right?
I mean, perfect example. We were stopped at Lowe's and my wife tugged my shirt. She's like, look, there's a Kiss shirt over there. She goes, it's End of the Road. You saw like 4 or 5 shows on that. Like, she saw it. I'm like, oh, there's Tommy and Eric right there. Any average Joe in there, but I've drug my wife through enough of these. She could say Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer. But I want to throw a little wrinkle into, not a wrinkle, a divergent into like our next topic. What was the name of the band when Scott Weiland was first kicked out of STP for drugs and all that stuff to go get himself cleaned up? The members of STP formed another band for a brief moment, and they had a decent radio single. What was the name of that? Hello. Very good. What was the name of the band?
Hello was the song. I actually liked it. I can't remember the name.
Yeah. What was the band? I don't remember.
I can't remember. I just remember the song.
Either.
The lead singer is,
who was the singer, Rob?
Dave Cotis.
Okay.
And he's not listed as anything else that I could see. Talk Show was the name of the band.
Talk Show. Wow. I would have never. You could have offered me $10,000.
But I remember going, oh, they're not gonna do anything. And I remember watching MTV going, I like that song. Bought the album. It was the only great song off the album. So I'm like, oh.
Rob, what year was that?
That was, I just closed.
That was like 95,
97, 98, 1 year.
It's before 4 when he cleaned his act up and they got him back. Yeah.
Because I remember when that came on, one of the first things I thought is that's what Motley should have done with John Corabi right there.
Yeah.
Just call it something. Because I remember that. That's funny that you brought that up. I haven't thought about that in years, but I'm gonna have to listen to that song later.
Rob, can we get this out of the way?
Yeah. Let's go to them. But real quick, I just want to see if
go ahead.
It's so funny how amazing that what a conversation can make you think about. We're about to get into Van Halen, and if you're watching or listening, I promise we're getting there because I know that's the big one. we probably haven't talked about this in a decade, but remember I had a little Velvet Revolver phase?
You did,
because
dude, yeah.
Slither was in Guitar Hero 3.
Yeah, Slither.
I thought that song was sick. That song was sick, and you're like, actually, it's Stone Temple Pilots guy and Slash. I'm like, no way. That was super hype. But
Guitar Hero phase was great. Because he would come to me with songs that I knew, and it was cool.
Man!
But then you had songs like Mother. Who was that? Remember who was that?
Mother.
Danzig.
Mother. Tell your children not to walk my way.
I would go listen to them. I would never have probably ever delved into their music, but there were all these songs on there. You know?
Mother, tell your children not to walk my way.
Tell your children not to speak my words, what they mean, that song. I remember being like the it was a cool riff.
It was,
man, those games where we should one day for a show, we should like go through the set list of all those games and be like, what's on there? And I remember being mad. I'm sorry. Last thing, I remember being angry because Guitar Hero 3 finally had a Kiss song and it was shouted out loud. And I'm like, all right, I like shouted out loud, but there's about 15 others I would have rather be sitting there pressing the buttons to, you know?
Little did you know that was going to be song 2 in the set for the rest.
Oh, God, for the rest of my life. I know, because I was like 09. So I'm like, yeah, every time I saw him then.
Well, that's funny. Let's get there. So I'll start this one off. I remember this vividly. My dad played fast pitch softball. So our summers were just traveling around the tri-state area. My dad playing fast pitch softball. So it was in hotels.
I didn't know that. That's dope.
We were taking our G.I. Joes, our Star Wars guys. We'd find a dirt hill somewhere and play. We're in the hotel room that night, and my softball best friend at the time, as we called each other, we had on MTV in the hotel, which we thought was great. Like, wow, we've got MTV in a hotel. We don't have cable at home. And Jump was just ending on MTV. And we heard breaking news story. Van Halen has announced their new lead singer in Sammy Hagar and will begin recording very soon. We looked at each other and went, who's that guy? Pointing at David Lee Roth, going, I was just at that phase listening to Michael Jackson and Bobby Brown and stuff like that coming into the rock side. So when 5150 came out, I was like, oh, this is great. I like that. Oh, David Lee Roth. He was the other singer. Well, I like Sammy Hagar. So I became a Van Halen fan right at 5150 and didn't have the hook. So I want to go to the two gentlemen that are below me in the screen, hearing that David Lee Roth was leaving Van Halen. What did that do to both of you gentlemen? And hearing Sammy Hagar is coming in.
First of all, my mic has been off for I don't know how long. So just FYI on your show, there might be a patch there where I'm speaking to my computer.
Okay.
That's weird. But
anyway. But you sounded good.
You sounded good.
Oh, did I? Okay. Well, that's cool. Okay. So I was young, right? I was 10, but I have a sister 5 years older than me. And first, my cousin, God rest his soul, he and I were the same age. He was like my brother. We were really into Motley Crue. I mean, Shout at the Devil and Too Fast for Love. I remember buying Shout at the Devil when it came out. I was into Too Fast for Love as a 7-year-old. And still one of my favorite rock records. On With the Show, still one of my favorite songs ever. And my sister was really into Van Halen, and I remember not liking them that much. I thought they were in competition, right? Because I remember like Hit Parader magazine and Circus, it was always like Vince and Dave, like, yeah, F that guy, this guy's cooler. And then as I got a little older, 9, 10, I mean, when I got to double digits, you know.
He aged as a rocker.
Puberty. Well, it was 1984. It was Panama and Hot for Teacher. Yeah. And that explosion of that record at MTV, that suddenly I went, oh, now I get it. And then I fell in love with Diver Down and Fair Warning and Women and Children First. And I was just starting to love Van Halen. And all of a sudden, I Can't Drive 55 as the lead singer. What? And so it was really weird. And when you lived it, that was one of the biggest, that was like Empire Strikes Back, Luke, I'm Your Father moments. I mean, like, what?
That's cool.
What?
That's cool.
It was wild. And so, and I don't want to get off too much on anything because I could talk hours about Van Halen. So I just want to try to stick to that comment. But it was weird. And Roth at that time had a big hit with Just a Gigolo. And it's crazy from the Heat. Well, back then we used to call it EPs.
EP.
Yes.
EPs. Right. EPs. And so you thought, well, he's going to be the star. And there's no way they're going to make that work. And, the rest is history. So.
Yeah. I don't know that in my whole history of music, 59 years old, I don't ever remember or remember anything ever like it since, or, at that time. They were as big as could be.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about it. And Dave was doing his little soiree off on his own, having his little side thing. And, back then there was nothing, you just had magazines and stuff. So you weren't preoccupied like you are now on a day-to-day basis, following Twitter, and you just didn't know, right? All I know is that they were one of the biggest bands in the world. 1984 was huge. Dave goes and does this solo thing. And then all of a sudden, a couple magazine articles, this or that, and it's over. And you're like, what? You're like, why? Like, so the Police broke up too, but that was different. They broke up, right? Because I was a big Police fan. And, they quit at their height. Sting, they called it quits after the Synchronicity tour. But this was it was disturbing. I had a whole group of friends. We were like, I don't know. We saw 1984 tour. It was incredible. What are you talking about? They split. How can this be? Sammy Hagar was the 55 guy. He was, Your Love Is Driving Me Crazy, Three Lock Box. I mean, he was on MTV. He was kind of cool, but he wasn't Dave. I mean, Dave was like macho. Dave was like, as a young guy at 14, 15, 16, you wanted to be Dave. He was like everything. He was like the personification of like rock and roll. So it was weird. And I remember being extremely upset, my buddies and I. And now here's where it gets even better, right? I've never seen anything like this since either, where then it became a competition. Each one puts out an album, and it was like they were competing against each other. Like, I don't know. Maybe you guys could tell me. I might be missing somebody down the road where this happened, but I've never seen anything like that where the singer leaves or gets fired, and then he's in direct competition with the band. The band makes a new album. They've got a song at the end of the album that kind of makes fun of the ex-lead singer. And, for me, if I was going to take a side, I probably would have took Dave, because I did like Eat 'Em and Smile better, slightly better than 5150.
I still do.
Me too. And I saw both tours.
Yeah.
And I actually like Dave's tour better, but there was just one thing why you couldn't leave Van Halen. And that was because of Eddie Van Halen.
That's right.
And so
that's right.
When I saw Dave, it was a cool show. The music, he had a great band, man. Stevie Vai and Billy Sheehan,
Greg Bissonette.
I mean, it was great, right? And when I saw Van Halen, like Sammy was he was good enough, like but like he was able to kind of do it. And Eddie made him cool. But man, Eddie and Alex and Mike, I mean, it was hard not. It was almost like I didn't know. It was like having two girlfriends or so. It was like I didn't really know which one. Like I loved them both, and it would be like, now looking back in retrospect, I firmly admit I like Eat 'Em and Smile better, and I do like some Skyscraper. But Van Halen with Sammy progressed much better than Dave did on his own.
Of course.
And that's where I'll leave it for me. That's where kind of revisionist history, you go back. Nothing will beat the six pack. The six pack with Dave.
Incredible.
I don't care what anybody says. It is rock and roll gold, right?
I love it.
Sammy's stuff doesn't age as well to me.
No.
And I left it for a while, but now when I go back and listen to some of it because of Eddie, there's some horrible shit, but there's some good stuff. There's some really good stuff too.
There's some really good stuff. And I would just say, and I don't mean to jump in here, I used to joke that Yankee Rose was the best Van Halen song in the Hagar years.
Yeah.
And there might be some truth to that, because it sounds like Van Halen.
Oh my God, that's Van Halen.
Oh yeah.
But the Hagar stuff has just not, and I don't even like 5150 or UNA12 really. I mean,
yeah.
Why Can't This Be Love? Sure, great pop songs like a Bryan Adams song. I do really like For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge, and I think Balance has about 4 or 5 tracks on there.
Yes, I agree with you.
And the Human Beings, they went out with a banger with Sammy on that one.
That's a good song.
It's a great Van Halen song. It is.
And you know the history of Human Beings. Sammy wrote the lyrics tongue in cheek. They were hated each. He was mad at him. You know that story, right?
Yeah.
He's got the music. And Sammy's like, "Oh, Breach, you're back." He was just kind of screwing around with it, and it turns out to be like maybe their best piece of music.
Yeah,
that they ever did together.
Yeah. That's right.
So yeah, I mean, you and I get fired up about it because I can't think of anything since that has compared to that. You know, Nico. I mean, Nick. You know, you obviously you had to get into all this stuff afterwards. He knows very little Hagar, right, son? You're
and I'm not really into it. Besides,
you did get to
besides humans being
see them. You saw the reunion with
and real quick, if I may ask, and I should know this, but how not that it matters, but just in context of this conversation, how old are you?
I'm 28.
28. Okay.
Heck yeah.
You're a grown man, my friend.
Season better.
Van Halen story. You had to drive me home from that.
Yeah, go ahead.
That was the bad story, right, son?
No, it wasn't that bad. Yeah, no, it wasn't that bad. You just you went with, and I'm not gonna say names, but you went with 2 friends / coworkers of yours, and you guys had a little fun. So I had like just gotten my license, and I had to drive us home from the show, and you couldn't give me the best direction, so I was nervous.
What was that? 2012, right? That was
2012
show.
So like, where I'll kind of take this because I want Rob's thoughts on all this, but I also want everyone's and Rob's thoughts on the next thing I'm going to say is it's kind of this interesting thing where it's like, okay, where do you come in? So I'm pretty sure I found out about Van Halen, Dad, because they're one of your top bands, but you really got me was Guitar Hero 2, right? Another example, right? And then I got into all their stuff. And then when I got into them, they weren't touring with Dave. Tried showing me some of the Sammy stuff, and outside of Humans Being, I wasn't into it. And then when I saw them, it was so cool. But I also saw Wolfie.
That's right.
And this is going to trigger my dad later down the stretch because I have thoughts on it. But so like, it's interesting for me is like a lot of what you all are talking about with a lot of these bands, like I didn't experience or wasn't alive to experience. And I truly wish I was, because I would have loved to see the Roth Hagar war, right? It sounds cool because you're right. There's none really like that because there's no really groups like that anymore. Where like that, I would say the closest thing you would get to is like controversy in like the hip hop or pop community, right? But that's about it. And who's into that, you know? Like who is Taylor Swift upset at is like the big thing now, right?
Yeah.
But so when I finally got to get back and see Van Halen, I mean, outside of Wolfie, I saw Dave. So I was back with Dave, and I agree with you, Rick, that Yankee Rose is like a top tier song, and it does sound like a Van Halen song. So yeah, I mean, that I don't have a lot on it. And I know, Dad, we talked about trying to see Sammy and you trying to get into his stuff. And to me, Van Halen, all I know and love is Dave. So I don't even have to kind of deal with that, with any of that conflict or going back and forth, because I found them with Dave, and then when I got to see them, I got to see Dave, and the rest is history for me, really.
Go ahead, Mr. Myers. We know you came in with
I came in with Sammy, and I was just young enough that my first concert was the Monkees 1989 World Tour. So the first like rock show that I saw was Cinderella, Nelson, and Lynch Mob. And then Kiss was shortly thereafter. So like being in high school, mom's like, I don't know, it's on a school night. So trying to get to some shows wasn't happening. I had a paper route that wasn't generating a lot of money. So I was still getting concert ticket money from mom and dad. Was always wanting to see Sammy in Van Halen. So after I graduated high school, the Balance album comes out. They have Don't Tell Me What Love Can Do. I'm like, what a killer tune. I've got to go see it. Back in the days before the computer and internet, you had to go to a physical Ticketmaster, stand in line, and hopefully you could get your tickets.
That's right.
I was 12th from the front of the box office at Kroger's, and they said sold out. I missed my chance to see Sammy in 2004 when they reunite, and that show was a train wreck with Eddie at the time. I missed that opportunity. So it's not until 1998 when Sammy is gone, they bring in Gary Cherone from Extreme, from Van Halen 3. It is the only time in Van Halen's history where the entire catalog of the band is played.
It's a great tour.
Great tour. I saw a little known band at the time called Creed. Oh, My Own Prison. These guys won't be around for 30 seconds after this tour. That's a discussion for a later day because we know what happened to Creed, which does fit into a singer leaves. They bring in a new singer, change the name of the band, and that band is just almost as good as the original. But anyway, so seeing, regardless of what you think of the 3 album, and I know that's kind of maligned with a lot of Van Halen fans, but seeing Gary on stage, I agree to what Michael Anthony and Gary Cherone said. We should have toured first as a band and then recorded. It might have gone over, but you're trying to go for the trifecta of going, we replaced a singer once and it did very well. Platinum albums, something we never did with Dave, had #1 singles. Now we're trying it for a 3rd time. And this is, as much as I love the 3 album, as much as I loved that tour, this was the epitome of fumbling the ball, not at the goal line. You're fumbling it at the kickoff and letting the team score on you and just being left with what the hell is this? I will defend that album all day long and say there's some great Eddie stuff on there, but it just didn't work. It just didn't hit with the masses, and that tour was plagued throughout its run.
May I say something on this? Because this topic is so, it's like dear to my heart. I respectfully agree and but also respectfully disagree. And I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. Let me give you my thoughts on it and just tell me what you think, because who really at the end of the day knows. I'm not 100% convinced that was the problem. I know they've said that. I've heard them say that we should have toured first. Okay, cool, fine, whatever. The tour was great. I think that if they went from the 2004 tour to that clean, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. If they would have had a breakup with Sammy and slowly transitioned to Gary, I think things would have been a lot easier for them, because they have pulled that off once before. If there were certain things they needed to do better. In my view, when they went on stage in 1996 at the MTV Music Awards with David Lee Roth, and I remember Chris Rock standing up going, what is the look on his face? He was a young black guy in the late 90s, which is very different in that time to be who he was for him and to be in entertainment the way he was, and had made a name for himself. And you're going, this young man, this brilliant young black comic, is standing on his feet, practically like in tears, cheering for Van Halen with Dave Lee Roth. Go watch it. You see what I'm talking about? He's like, oh my God, what? And it was such a cool multicultural. It was just so beautiful to me. Like I can't describe it. It gives me chills. I remember watching that with my friends going, I cannot believe Dave is back, because it wasn't like they were hurting commercially. I mean, Balance was a big record. The tour was big. You know, the Twister soundtrack with Human Beings was a huge hit. And then the songs were great. Meanwhile, Magic is great.
Can't Get This Stuff No More. Is that what that's
a great
that's a great tune.
That's a great band. That sounds like something that could have just been on freaking Women and Children First. And with a little bit of a Dave solo thing, which I thought was cool. It was kind of a timestamp of them recording together in 1995 or 96, whenever they actually recorded it. I think that was what happened, is that we got our palette. But I remember MTV running that Welcome Back Dave bit.
Yes.
They were playing Welcome Back Carter.
Well, yes, that's right. That's right.
And Dave was dancing around and everything. It was right after that. Like, oh, he's back. He's back. And then, right? And you're going, and then how do you transition from, you go to Sammy, and the only solution for fans to be okay with that at that moment was Dave. And then that fell apart. And I think that was, I don't think anything could have saved that Gary Cherone record. It might be the biggest bet.
Now, there was a trifecta. I'll let Nico chime in here real quick. There was a trifecta going on at that time in this perfect storm in 96 where rock and roll was back. You had Kiss on the reunion tour. You had Dave coming out on MTV. Who else reunited with an album called When Hell Freezes Over? The Eagles come back with that.
The Eagles, yeah. Yeah.
Like you had like those three bands to go where you're in this grunge phase where like the hair metal classic rock is done. You've got David Lee Roth, you've got Kiss, and you've got the Eagles back taking forefront. Music was like, no, we're not done yet. Yep. And one of those pieces falls off with David Lee Roth, and Kiss carries 96 in, and Eagles does very well. But it's what could have been for Van Halen. Again, is just Dave and they had what Mitch Malloy.
Mitch Malloy
was actually recording before Gary. Gary came in and they were like, Gary's a bigger name than what Mitch is. I think we're going to go with Gary.
Yeah. It was just so dysfunctional because like when you hear some of the real stories, I even think at the MTV Awards, it was almost like, why did they do that? It was like they almost knew at that time they weren't getting back, right?
Yeah.
Have you guys ever heard the interviews and stuff?
Yeah.
It was almost like they did it anyway, knowing. So Nico, you understand, you're listening a little bit because this is what happened.
Yeah.
They were supposed to reunite. It was like when Kiss came out, but they reunited. They carried it on. It's like, so we're all sitting there, we're all got our Jones up. We're like, Dave's back. And then it's like you don't hear anything for a while. Again, there was no news or anything like that. Then you're like, wait a second, Dave's not back. And it was like, so Rick, you're absolutely right. It was doomed from the start.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now whether or not, I'm not a particular big fan of that album either. I could pick a few tracks off that album and like them, but I will tell you this: Allstate Arena, where we saw Kiss, I was in the 8th row with my guys for that show, and yeah, Gary was a little Mick Jaggerish. He was, very flamboyant, a little different maybe. But man, that set list they did on that tour was incredible. Feel Your Love Tonight. Somebody Get Me a Doctor. They did Human Beings. I mean, really dove back. Mean Street for
Mean Street.
First time I never got to see that because when I saw 84, they weren't doing any of those songs. They did not, they did. But I mean, he really, in listening to Gary interviews, on podcasts and stuff, like he really wanted to go back and do that. But, then Eddie does the song, How Many Say I, and there were some bad spots in that concert too. Don't get me wrong. It left you a little bit, you were elated for most of it. And then it kind of left you flat a little bit, but you can't tease your fan base like that, Rick.
No,
you just can't do it.
No, especially with a dynamic front man, like it was and is. And I will never forget, I saw the Dave and Sam tour.
So did I.
And it was great. It was really great. And the night I saw it once, and I saw it in Dallas. And the night I saw Dave closed. Yeah, and I had never seen him live. Right.
Yeah, oh, okay.
So you know what I mean. I missed it. I remember my sister and my mom. I remember went to go see 84, and I remember them coming home and telling a story about some girl threw their panties on stage, and Dave picked them up and looked at Eddie instead of these Valeries, and he got pissed off. Yeah,
Wonder why there was a riff in Van Halen.
Yeah. Looking back on it, it was all there. But no, and then I love the Sammy years. It was part of my. In fact, I got busted skipping school my senior year, going to downtown Dallas to see their free show. You can go to YouTube and see free Van Halen Dallas show, and they played live. They came to Dallas.
Right. Yeah. There was a bootleg. I think I got the bootleg of that show. Yeah.
Sammy had his voice was hurt, so they had to cancel their show. He's like, we're going to come back to Dallas and we're going to play live. Like, 8th largest city in the country. You're going to make that announcement, and man, middle of the day in downtown Dallas. And a camera, this is 1993, 92, 93, a camera panned by us, and one of us, to this day, we're not sure who, but it was like 5 of us, ended up on the news, right? And somebody got a call from somebody and a mom, and we all got busted skipping school because we're on the news. But so that era of Van Halen was very dear to my heart. But still, when they announced Dave was coming back, I think, okay, I've accepted this era. I like it. I really like From Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. It's great stuff. but it's not Fair Warning. It's not Women and Children First. It's just not. It's not. It doesn't transcend. But yeah, so it was doomed. But that was a great tour, and then what did you guys think? And I don't mean to jump here, but there's such a weird, their career is wild, because then they did the 2004 reunion tour with Sammy. I think they had some songs, right?
Didn't they? Yeah, they had
Up for Breakfast, Learning,
Out of Time, and
Learning. Yeah, what was the other one? Learning to See or something like that.
Learning to See,
yeah. Those weren't on my radar at all. I was kind of.
That was awful. The show was awful. I went to the show.
I loved It's About Time. I was excited.
Oh, did you see it, Rob?
No, I missed that one. But when they released that song, I was like, thank God Sammy's back.
That was a horrible show. And if you read the books, Eddie was really all effed up, and he looked like his teeth were rotten out of he had like a mohawk thing going on, and Sammy looked like they were going through the motions. It was just really, really bad. And
very, very strange.
Yeah, very strange. And then then they Wolfie the Kid. My son loves the kid.
That was a great tour.
Great tour, man.
It was a great tour, man. I mean, I wish Mikey would have been there, though. I mean, really. Nothing against Wolf. That should have been Anthony, but I get it. He was with Sammy. They just couldn't make that work. There's too much bad blood. But what a great tour. I mean, it was. I like Liberace Dave. I like Dave in his 60s. Yeah. He's weird. It's a weird thing.
What do you guys make of the modern day? Yeah, we lose Eddie Van Halen. You lose one of the great musicians in the history of the world of music. What do you guys make of all this sniping that goes on now with the David Lee Roth podcast and with the kid? And Dave, Dave's out there revealing some cryptic things with Eddie, and Eddie's not here anymore to defend himself, but yet I'm so interested in those things. It's almost like I can't stop listening to him. And did you hear the one that it was called The Effing Kid, but then he changed it?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say one thing on that is that I'm going to give Dave some credit here. Sammy can't keep his mouth shut about Dave.
Yes, he's been sniping about him forever. Right.
And then he goes on Howard Stern and says, hey, man, if David Lee Roth wants to get on this tour, you bring it, man. And then Dave was like, cool, I'll do it. And then the moment that somebody said he'd do it, then he started bashing Dave. I thought, well, that was bullshit. I mean, why would you why did you just do that? Like he extended some goodwill, and then you do that, right? Because your ego, you can't get it out of the way. And then with Wolf, I think he was saying some stuff, and I don't know, man. It's all just so. But what would Van Halen be without the drama? But I just wish we talked about Taylor and Foo Fighters. It's very, very sad that we have not had a true tribute, something for Eddie. And Taylor gets 30, rightfully so, and earned every one.
Yeah.
But nothing for Eddie. And Alex Van Halen has a book coming out called Brothers.
Yes.
It's the first time he's
kind of come to the public, somebody said he was at they saw him. There's a great podcast called the Dave and Dave podcast. I don't know if you guys ever listened to it at all. It's their podcasts are about 4 hours long. It's called Dave and Dave Unchained. Couple of guys just like shouted out loud, Tom and Zeus, and they're not particularly musical guys or anything. And they had said that I guess people had a picture where Alex was at Wolfgang's wedding, and it looked like he had like oxygen tubes in the picture. And they said they probably didn't really know that picture was in there, but yeah, they're just so dysfunctional amongst each other that they can't put together a reunion. I mean, a tribute. I can't, for the life of me, I can't believe that. So, kudos to Sammy for what he's doing. He's doing the best of both worlds, and he's got Joe Satriani and Mike and Jason Bonham. I mean, Sammy kicked Vic out. He kicked his guitar. Vic is a Vic Johnson, right?
Vic Johnson. Yep.
Yeah. And who always got criticized that he couldn't play the Van Halen music or whatever. And so, Sammy's going to do it. Sammy's like close to 80. I give him a lot of credit. I mean, he's still decent, but man, he cannot shut up. His insecurity over David Lee Roth is just,
it's real.
It's unbelievable. It's so obvious. Like, I would like to see him and say, dude, you are a rock god. You're a legend.
You have platinum albums over Dave.
You never have to talk about Dave. It's okay. David, like, you would be so much cooler if you never went there? Like, what are you doing? I don't know. It's crazy.
Well, here's one. I haven't seen the documentary yet. I need to subscribe to Hulu.
Here we go. Here we go.
Bon Jovi.
Well, and Wolfgang too, right? Isn't there one for him out?
I think there's
he did. He did an episode of Behind the Music. Which I will gladly be tuning into because I'm a big Wolfie guy. But
okay, so Behind the Music. So I'm sorry, Rob. So Behind the Music. So then the Hulu is the Bon Jovi.
Bon Jovi.
Okay,
yeah.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
So, how do I want to segue this? In the whole like Dave and Sammy and Dave and Eddie, you have a similar thing of a band of brothers that this is the inner circle. No one leaves. We're going to do this. You have Alec John Such that never probably really played on anything beyond the first album, and Hugh McDonald's always off in the background, but they're holding that image of this is the Jersey Boys. We're going to rule the world. Then you get to a show and Richie is MIA, doesn't show up. Bon Jovi takes a little bit of a divergence. They bring Phil X in, and now Bon Jovi has become, talk about when is a band not a band. It's just Tico and Alex. You got Hugh, who's been there for a while, and John. As big as Bon Jovi got, they kind of settled back down into this, his political activist, his all that stuff going on, and then the deterioration of his voice, much like our guy in Paul Stanley, to where you start going, whoa, hold on a second. At what point are you tarnishing your legacy where you're like, maybe it's time to set it down for a little bit, but you're still packing people in? So I haven't seen the documentary yet. I'm really excited to, but just in Bon Jovi of how this band started and how big they were. And now it's almost like the Van Halen thing. Like, you don't want to try and fix this thing and put this thing back together, bring Richie into the fold, because this may be it. We may have just seen the last Bon Jovi album ever released. So I just kind of want to throw a Bon Jovi thing here.
Rick, are you a Bon Jovi guy?
No, but I mean, obviously I've got a lot of respect for their and I think he's great, but no, I'm not. I've never been real. I remember dedicating "You Give Love a Bad Name" to a sixth grade girlfriend.
Hell yeah! Nah, dude, this is the one I wanted to bring up.
You're a big Bon Jovi.
They're right behind Kiss.
Yeah,
they were and Bon Jovi really was. Real right, Dad. My kind of inception to rock and roll with the album Crush, and the song "It's My Life" is arguably my favorite song ever, and I've kept that song throughout the last 20 years of my life, and it has applied to everything I've always done, and I still love that. This is the one where I could finally sit here with you all in a different way than Taylor and say I was here for it. And it affects me, and I'm seeing it affect the band. This one hurts, and me and my dad have talked about this. We've never talked about this on a podcast yet, so this is the episode to do it. I think Bon Jovi's done. I think he should stop. They're not the same band, and we saw. Oh man, if Kiss is the most we've seen together, Dad, Bon Jovi's right up there. 7 or 8 times, and I mean, talk about the run from 2009 to 2013. Was some of the most electric concerts I've ever been to. John Bon Jovi was a god up there, as cocky as ever, vocally still strong, running all around the stage.
3-hour shows, long shows.
3-hour shows, and then Richie leaves, and we saw him again, and the show was pretty bad. And we walked away from it. That was what, Dad, 2016?
Yeah.
And you forget
what was bad about it. I'm curious.
So Phil X, no disrespect to Phil X, he's a great guitar player.
Right.
Richie added so much. You didn't realize how much Richie added vocally. The choruses. I mean, when he comes in with John, they were powerful.
Yeah.
Then when it was just John, and you could hear at that point too, it was like the the most terrible perfect storm of then John's voice started to go, and Phil and them didn't really try to match much vocally. And you hear John struggling. Phil didn't have the same swagger Richie did. I mean, Richie was at a point where he would sing a song or two. The solos would be incredible. And Richie had energy with the voice box. I mean, he was the guy. Now, Phil X to me is this awkward, and I feel so bad because I have nothing against him. I have nothing against him. I think he's a very talented guitar player, but he's doing this weird thing where he's like almost doing what like I alluded to earlier, like Tommy Thayer does, where he's not trying to copy Richie. And that's unfortunate because Richie is so good. But then when he does the voice box stuff, it feels awkward. The voice box for It's My Life and Living on a Prayer, like the intro to Living on a Prayer when they do the voice box. I mean, that's Richie coming in, wow. And seeing the other guy do it. And I didn't realize how much a voice box, and I might be wrong here as a musician, but the voice box doesn't even sound the same. Because Phil X must sound different than Richie in the voice and the octaves and whatever. And I'm a speech pathologist and I know a lot about voice, but as it comes to a voice box, I can't help us there. But this shows it all just sounded different. And then John lost a step. I mean, in that show in 3 years, we talk about it. We talked about it on the show too. If you've been following us, there is something health-wise with John that I think they have yet to admit or will ever admit, because then John's not leaving the mic stand. And you don't have Richie there to compensate vocally. You don't have Richie to compensate from a guitar standpoint. And now John's not even moving. And they're going back to writing these albums about America and stuff. And man, they had a run, man. My appreciation for albums like Lost Highway have grown. The Circle was a really good album. And then Because We Can or whatever, or What About Now, whatever that album wasn't that good. But since Richie left, man, they feel like a shell of themselves. And John's even alluded to the fact that they might not ever tour again, but they're still trying to put music out. And you're right, Rob. At what point does it feel like a parody, or does it feel like, man, hang it up? And I hate to say this, but like at least Kiss was still, Stanley's still flying out to the center of and I know health and age, I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is like when you can still do it, you do it. When you can't do it anymore, sometimes I think you have to quit while you're ahead. And Gene's still spitting the blood and flying to the top. And Dave was out here still going to open up for Kiss. Dave was still going to tour. He was still going to twirl around his dude. How about on the tour, Rick, you were saying when he slid on that square and he had like the cane?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? And he had like the wired mic and he's doing the choreography. I mean, and then you get John up there, he's struggling. And then I didn't realize how important John was the guy, but I didn't realize the Wanted Dead or Alive doesn't sound the same when Richie's voice isn't belting, Living on a Prayer, when they do the intro to Wanted Dead or Alive either. It's none of the songs sounded the same. They don't feel the same. So Bon Jovi, this one hurts for me because I'm like, we skipped the last 2 times they were here with Phil X because we're like, I can't.
I was saying, why doesn't he just be John Bon Jovi?
I don't know.
You know what I mean? He hasn't accomplished. I mean, I love his stuff. Like not Wanted Dead or Alive. That's Bon Jovi proper. But they wanted that for the Young Guns film. He's like, no. I'm going to write a song, and he wrote
Blaze of Glory. Yeah.
Blaze of Glory is a song, man.
That's a
song. Yeah. My God, Rick, I love you, brother. That's a song.
It's a song, and that movie is dope, dude. I love it.
It's a great movie. I went through that phase too, dude. I love both Young Guns movies. Those movies are rip, man.
They're so great. Both of them are great. I was watching. I don't want to get into the Young Guns. That's a conversation for another day. But yeah, but I'm just saying that he's accomplished enough to just be like, you know what I mean? It doesn't even hurt your ego because your solo is the name of the band, which is your name anyway. I don't know. It's weird. Because like Michael Anthony, the album they released in 2012, Van Halen, I like Simple Kind of, a different kind of truth, different kind of truth. It's a great record, but you can tell that Mike's not singing in the background, and live you can tell. But I didn't see Bon Jovi live without Richie Sambora. But those songs that you guys just mentioned, I mean, that Sambora is a part of that song. You know what I mean? He's not an enhancement. He is like co-singing essentially. That's a wild point of view there, man. That's crazy. I want to watch the documentary. I mean, how can you not just?
You have to. I've seen it, Rob, and we all have to watch it because we got a pot. It's every bit of 5 hours, but it's pretty good.
Eddie Trunk, you know who Eddie Trunk is, right?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Eddie was praising it, saying this is one of the best. Yeah, he's raw and honest.
Yeah, and Richie's there, but he's not. They're not together, and they're brutally honest, right? And we're not going to spoil that now, but Rob, you as you preface this, I can only concur that the name may be Bon Jovi, but it was always the two of them together, and that's how important he is. And when you take him out of the equation, even with John falling and maybe beyond the vocals, I still think there might have been a little bit of health issue with John that they've never admitted to. It feels like a corporate gig, right? It doesn't feel like rock and roll anymore after Richie left. It's not the same. It's weird. And you'll see in the documentary, Noble, one guy can't, there's people, there's payroll, you don't quit. But I don't, and Phil X is great on the documentary, Nick. Nick, when you watch it, son.
No, I'm sure he's great. I'm sure he's great.
It's just
good for him.
Whatever they did, Rob, they needed another singer.
They did.
And so they bring this percussionist, a great older black guy, I forget his name, but they really needed a guitar replacement for Richie. And that's how we talk about when these bands do replace people and they're successful. Yeah, you can't replace Freddie Mercury and all that, but you got to get somebody with the charisma and the moxie, along with the chops and the playing ability, not to be a complete imitation, but to carry this. And John didn't do it. He just, he's got John Shanks and Bobby Bandolero, and they kind of tried to do a group effort with it. You got to get a good looking guy, maybe a younger guy. You go to a Bon Jovi concert, it's a lot of women. It's a lot of housewives. It's something
John Bon.
It is really a sight to behold. It's, and I've taken the wife to shows and all that. We laugh, but it's quite a attractive crowd. It's and the guy could, but he's become a parody, Rob. I'm going to throw this to you. We talk about it with these groups. So John, noble effort, but he's unfortunately become a parody of himself right now.
I'm looking at the clock and I just want to keep this going. And I've got two bands I want to mention.
Yes.
So
sure.
Talk about replacing somebody and having charisma. One is born out of your guys' neck of the woods being Styx, and the other is Journey. To degrees of being able to replace somebody and still keep going. Whether you like Dennis DeYoung, you've got Lawrence Gowan, who's got all kinds of stage presence, maybe not to the level of Dennis, but has got chops upon chops, and Styx has been able to continue on. Then you have Journey going through all these varying singers, from Steve Perry to Steve Augeri, that kept the flag going. You had Jeff Scott Soto come in for that brief little bit when Augeri loses his voice. And then they go to the Philippines to the YouTube and they bring Arnell in, and Journey is continuing on doing their 50th anniversary. So I know we're running on time here, but I just kind of want to sprinkle in some classic rock of being able to carry on and still not go, man, you guys should have hung it up. They're still being able to rake in. They may not be selling arenas by themselves. I think Journey can, but you get like a Styx, an REO Speedwagon, and you get a 38 special, and you're like, this is a great night out on the lawn for a concert. So I want to throw those couple bands here before we wrap this up, because I don't want to make this.
Rick, I'm gonna throw that to you. Are you a particular fan of a Journey?
Well, so I think that there is. I think we'll come full circle here, right? We're talking about there's certain bands, and and I got to get a little bit of Motley Crue in on this. Just
we got to talk absolutely.
Just for I mean, even for 30 seconds, because
elaborate on them.
Those guys got me into music. I loved Michael Jackson because of Motley Crue. I loved the Beatles and Billy Joel and Tina Turner, and I'm not even exaggerating. All of that stuff that I loved growing up. was because of Too Fast for Love. And, everybody there's a genesis for everything. And so, but with those guys specifically, when they got rid of Vince, and Motley gets this sort of, they get put in this category of, oh, well, they commercially dropped off in the mid-90s because of grunge. I would argue if Vince stayed in that band and they released that same record with him singing on, you could even have brought John Corabi in for a rhythm guitar player and whatever. Would it have done Dr. Feelgood numbers? No, but it would have been probably triple platinum, I bet. They wouldn't have missed a beat, just like Guns N' Roses didn't, just like Van Halen didn't. They were at that stature. But they could not get rid of Vince, or at that time, Tommy or Nikki. There's just no way.
Right.
Certain bands, you can't get rid of certain members. The members are the band. ZZ Top cannot replace, they just can't. But Journey, who the hell knows who's in Journey? Right?
I know.
Styx, who knows who's in Styx? We do, but the masses. Just get a band up there, call it Night Ranger, and play the hits, and everybody's good. They don't know. They have no idea who these people are.
Let's stick on the Motley kick then. Let's go there. Let's round out with Motley.
Okay.
So, you set it up perfectly. As big as Motley Crue is, and going into 1991 and the decade of decadence, is that right? The name of the album? You have Angela on there, Anarchy in the UK, and one of my favorite Motley Crue songs, and Primal Scream. That song hit MTV, and I was like, it took that Motley Crue, Dr. Feelgood sound and just fattened that up. I was like, that's got to be the next album.
That's right.
Vince sounded like $1 million, and then all of a sudden, Air is out. Like, I was living and breathing Kiss, and I was living and breathing Bon Jovi. But I got to be honest, for a brief window in there, it was all Motley Crue, and I was crushed to hear Vince Neil was leaving. And I was like, seriously? What are we going to do?
Well, they got a better singer, and I want to touch upon that for just 2 seconds, and we'll tie it all in. Sure, so he was a better singer. Sammy Hagar is a better singer than David Lee Roth. You can get a better guitar player than so-and-so, but it's about the fit for that band. And Roth is the voice of Van Halen to me. He just always will be. I don't care who you get to sing. That's an amazing, and just like with Vince is the voice of Motley Crue. It doesn't matter if he's can't sing live anymore, which he can't. God bless him. He can't. That's okay. To me, he doesn't have to. Like, I don't even give a shit. Just get up there and run around. But the voice, the sound, it's so distinctive. And so they was survived 100%. And in 1991, when Primal Scream came out, that was when Bob Rock was really high with the Black Album too, right? So you had Inner Sandman and Unforgiven and Sad But True, and then Motley had Primal. So you had Motley Crue, Primal Scream, Top Anarchy. You had the Black Album. You had Pearl Jam 10, phenomenal. You had Soundgarden. You had Smashing Pumpkins. You had Van Halen for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. You had Skid Row, Slave to the Grind. Yep. You had Alice in Chains. Was that 92? That might have been 92.
92.
Okay, so but all the rest I'm accurate about. We're 90. Was 10 was 10 91 or 90?
10 might but the first part of 91. So you're
and then obviously Nirvana, Nevermind.
Yeah.
And they all coexisted. Like Motley Crue and Nirvana coexisted in the charts. And Smashing Pumpkins and Metallica. It was a great year for rock and roll, in my opinion. One of the best. And they could have survived it, but they got rid of him. And then as much as 94, it's a killer record. And Corabi's great. And I love the Scream. I was into the Scream when they were running around doing Man on the Moon and
I heard of them because of the Encino Man.
Shit. Going blank. But anyway, it wasn't them, and it didn't work, and there's certain members you couldn't replace. The Beatles. Motley had that curse, one of those bands you just couldn't replace. And you look at their career, that didn't work. And then later they replaced Tommy, but he also left and did his rap stuff. They brought in Randy Castillo from Ozzy. He dies of cancer. Then they bring in Samantha Maloney. From Hole. And then that was a shit show. Nikki relapsed, started doing heroin and banging her and cheating on his wife. I remember I was hanging out with those guys in 2002 on that tour, literally. And Vince is hammered, Nikki's on heroin. Mick's just looking around, and Samantha and Lonnie, I was standing there having a drink with her, and she's looking at me like, shit show. I was at 97 won the Eagle in Dallas. I'd won this contest, and I was backstage with them and having drinks, and it was wild. It was a cool day. But that still didn't work. Now they're out touring with John 5, and I don't know how that's really going to transcend. Have you guys heard the new song, Dogs of War?
I have, and my review of it was John 5 has a great backup band. It's the John 5 band with Tommy Lee, Vince Neil, and Nikki Sixx. It sounds like a John 5 track.
It is. It's John 5 with Motley Crue playing with them, right? I agree with that. It's not really a Motley Crue song.
As much as he praises Mick, and he wants to get to that sound, you didn't replicate that on the single of the band that you have so much reverence for. It's just John 5.
You know, I got to get into it. You talk about Motley Crue, you know, like, I had like a fling with Motley Crue, right? Like who did, and you know, I mean, Wild Side was like, I've got that live version of it. It's on my playlist all the time. Especially when you know the one I'm talking about where Tommy introduces it, and he says,
"Oh yeah, yeah."
Like that's always on my playlist.
That's a good version.
I mean, Kickstart. I mean, like I was in love with that band. They rocked the shit out of me but I got to be honest with you guys. When he left, when they kicked him out or whatever happened, like I never really went back to them.
Yeah.
And the only stuff I ever really listened to is the pre-stuff. Like anytime I saw them new or, you know, like watch Vince overweight and, you know, or struggling to sing. And I watched that Tommy Lee reality show. Remember there was I loved all those guys. I mean, I really did. Nikki, I'm fascinated behind the music. I wasn't a big fan of the Netflix movie. I didn't think they did a real good job with the movie, but it's a weird band because like I can only listen to them or watch them or follow them back in time, even though they have existed several times in different inclinations and released new music. It's a weird thing for me, Rick.
Did you listen to Saints of Los Angeles? That was
I did not. No,
2008.
No. It's good.
I think that's
I'm going to do it now. Now I'm going to go listen to it. Like, you know,
like, I mean, and I like some of the stuff I'm about to tell you to skip, but I'm saying it in the context of your feelings towards this. Skip Generation Swine, even though I personally like it. I do. Skip all the miscellaneous songs they've done with Bob Rock and everything over even Dogs of War. Although Bitter Pill's also great. But Saints of Los Angeles, I think, is probably their third best full-length album. It's incredible.
It's a great album.
It's a great album.
I slept on that for too long, and I was blown away by it.
Yeah, it's great. Right, every song, "Animal and Me."
Oh my God!
Why was that not released, dude? That's a killer song.
Yeah,
killer.
Vince sounds so good. He sounds like Shout at the Devil Vince on that song. He sounds like
Danger.
This is all 2008. When is this?
Yeah, 8.
Like okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and I saw them. I saw them twice. I mean, it was again all pre-90. It was great, but it's just so weird to me. Like I'm trying to think if I've got another band like that. Like for 4 or 5 years, man, I was like, yeah. And Nick, I didn't, right? I mean, I
want to hear 28 years old. Tell me what. Nick. Yeah,
I told you this is live album, right? I mean, I told you this is one of the best live albums. It's the live one. When did that come out? It came out later too, right, Rob? It didn't come out.
That was the Carnival. That's the year I saw in the 2004. Carnival
that feels like when's live
entertainment.
From?
I'm gonna look it up.
But I think the live record was like 99 though.
I think it might have been.
Yes. And it's not from one show. They pulled a U2.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, I think it's like there's some songs that are live from 83, 197, etc.
It's live entertainment. It's from 1999.
99.
Yeah. Right. So besides the
that's studio, a great live
I adore
album.
Like it's always it's just so weird that I don't anything post 94, 95. I was just turned off by them for some reason. I don't know what it is. I never felt like they were the same or the stories, maybe articles or whatever like that. But man, they were as hard and as great and as theatrical as anybody. And I mean, they, whatever they did, they all these groups take bits and pieces from other groups, right? And they create their own identity with them, And I mean, I saw a lot of Kiss in Motley Crue, and they were influenced by Kiss. And I mean,
oh yeah,
that's another reason I like them too. I used to hear all those interviews and all that, and I was like, wow, these guys are really, really great. But yeah, I'm glad we did this because I'm gonna listen to some of that stuff now. Because
so am I.
one of the great things about this podcast is that we're all diverse here, and Rob will have us go back and listen to some stuff that we've never heard or whatever.
I love it.
It's pretty cool.
Well, listen to Animal in Me.
Okay.
Okay.
Just give me that
Deal.
favor. Yeah. It's
Deal.
a great track.
And I am a guy too. I always say this, and I listen, I'm a lead singer. I love lead singers. Like
oh, he loves his lead singers.
I love my lead.
We got to do a show of the lead singers you love. That would be a great. That would be a great show.
To be a sexy. I don't care if he's
He loves a good front man. He loves a good front man.
I like to be entertained, right? Like I don't like to go see a show and just see a guy stand up there. Like I've seen them all, man. Phil Collins. I mean, Peter Gabriel. I mean, there isn't anybody I haven't seen. And my impression is no matter how good the music is, what did they do at the show? Like, did they entertain me? And that's what makes all these guys great. Like I didn't see the Stones till 1997 at Soldier Field and the Bridges to Babylon tour. I was not a particularly big Stones fan. Yeah, I loved Miss You and I've grown up listening to all that stuff. I got dragged at the bar I was at. I got dragged by a couple to see it. Mick Jagger comes out, and I've never been the same since. And that's 1997. And I went on an odyssey with the Stones for like 10 years where my wife will tell you, I probably saw them 30, 35. And I was lucky their road crew used to come into my bar. I was at the Aragon Ballroom. I've seen shows that, so like I like Vince Neil, but when Vince got fat, and he's running around out there, it's like, it just doesn't.
It's tough.
It's tough. It just didn't look good to me. I want to be like, look at my lead singer and be like, dude, I want to be you, I want to get up there. You inspire me. And when you see some of these guys like that, it's a turnoff to me. And that's one of the reasons too with Motley where I kind of checked out a little bit, and then you see the YouTube videos, everybody's making fun and, just like they do with John with The Voice. I see that with Vince and with John Bon Jovi and all that. So it's, we got to do a lead singer one.
We got to do a lead 9. That's what we have to do.
Yeah. We got to do a lead 9.
Yeah. That's
the 9.
I love it.
The 9 lead singers. Yeah. Because I love to be, that's the great thing about rock and roll too, is I love to be entertained, and
yeah.
And it all different members, guitar players, everybody. When I go see the band, the dynamic for me too is what's everybody doing, right? I saw Rush. Rush was great, and Neil Peart, I could watch him all day long, and I love him, but it was a pretty boring show to me. I saw it, and
it's a musician's band, really.
Yes, it really is, and I respect that, but I was looking for a little bit
Dream
more,
Theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were the Rush of the 90s, really.
Yeah,
right?
let's play for 25 minutes, and the lead singer's not going to come out till 26 minutes and sing.
That's hysterical. That's great,
so I would like to keep this going till the wee hours till we can't.
We can do sure. We can keep going.
Part 2. The last thing I want to end on. We'll do everybody's socials here in just a second. But what a great time! As I just turned 50 in February, and I'm seeing all of my favorite bands come to. Aerosmith is restarting there, and I didn't even get into Aerosmith on this, but all these bands celebrating 50 years and like final tours to go of all the groups and artists and the groups that we fell in love with going, not that I've ever felt old going, wow, everyone that I've grown up with has just about reached the end of their finish line. And I go, man, I'm so happy to have grown up when I did we can go back and forth about all of these bands. I like Sammy better. I like Dave better, but we can all go, but damn, Eddie Van Halen. Okay, let's put a Sammy record on, or let's put a Dave record on. I'm glad we had a chance to go through this, and like Rick, we got to have you on and do.
Specific. This is like part 1. We're gonna.
This is part 1.
This is part 1 of a series.
People wear shoes. You have to have 2 shoes. We had the right shoe. We got to get the left shoe.
We got to get the left shoe.
That's brilliant.
That's great.
So since I said left shoe, I know you've got some podcasts out there, sir. Where can people go hear you, listen to you speak, and what do you have going on, and what's in the world of Rick Shew that you'd like to tell the listeners about?
Well, I'll refrain from anything political, but I launched a podcast a year and a half ago called Friends from Work. I'm just thank you very much. We're working on it. I'm about to really rev it back up, and there's some changes coming and stuff, and I would love us to have you guys on and let's do a show.
Oh, sure.
Be my friends from work, and we'll have. Sure. In fact, I'll get with you guys off mic here about an idea I have where it won't interfere with like a part 2 of this. But I'll get with you guys. So that's at what is my Twitter handle, or Friends from Work Pod, and so follow me there. And all I want to do with this, guys, as you guys know, I was at BOF for many years, great memories, and it helped morph me into like the pop culture podcast theater, good, bad, indifferent that I am now. I just, at this point in time, all I want is just to book who I want to book, talk about what I want to talk about. If 3 people listen, great. If 3 million people listen, great.
Same boat.
I just want to have fun, and that's really it. I'm 48 years old. I'm married. I'm happily married. I've got a beautiful family. Life is great. Yeah. This used to be a source of stress and contention, and I contributed to it. 2016 and 17, like I look back on that going, what was I doing with fandom? I made it so tough.
Well, there's a lot that happened in those years.
I know.
In Star Wars and DC, which I need to talk about, especially Star Wars. I need to talk Star Wars with you one day.
I'd be on my 15-20 minute drive to work, and the podcast is starting one way, and I'd get almost to work, and I'd go, what the hell happened in this episode? Why we jumped the shark 12 times in this episode. Man. But next week I was like, okay, I got to hear where this is going to go. So I get it.
Yeah. And this to me now is just fun. And even if I'm arguing or it's just trolling friends.
Like, it's all good fun.
I saw your comment and I was like, damn you, Shew. I got to chime right back.
Yeah, sure. So anyway, I appreciate you guys having me on. This is a blast. Y'all are all a force of good for fandom. Best father and son duo ever.
Hey, thank you. Thanks, brother. That
just
means the world, man.
Solid humans, and I'm honored to be here, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, man. I feel the same. Like I say, buddy, it's a pleasure to see you because I feel like I know you. You know,
likewise,
your beautiful wife and your daughters and everything. It's great. You know. Yeah, you can follow me at N Caruso Jr. on Twitter, and the same thing. We're at the Vigilante 1939 with our other Nick, the 3 Nicks, but same thing. You know, I'm looking to have fun too. I think we all have gone down that rabbit hole a little bit. You know, it's like you know.
Oh yeah,
I think that's behind a lot of us right now. So it's just me too, man. That's why we were fortunate to meet Rob talking about the 3 Jokers. I don't know if you know that story. We were doing a tailgate when the 3 Jokers story came out with everybody, right? Pete Vera, Justin
Kowalski, and Nico is wearing a Rock and Roll Over Dress to Kill t-shirt.
Yeah. It was a Dress to Kill shirt.
And I was like,
what Joker adjacent shirt could I put on for this
Batman,
podcast?
And I was like, I bet that dude can't name one Kiss song if his life depended on it. On a side chat, after a while, I forgot, oh crap, we're talking about Batman. I should probably chime in and say something on here. So that was a great happy accident during COVID. Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah.
Nico, brother.
Where to find me at Nico Caruso, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. My dad did the other plugs at Nico Knows Film on TikTok. At the YouTube with Herman and Chris Clow. We're at the Comic Binge.
Love those guys, man.
Yeah, dude, they're good. They're good, dude. They know comics, and sometimes I think I know comics, and I get on there and they talk, and I'm like, whoa. So they are doing great. They're great. So I'm on there with a lot of Spider-Man stuff. Rick, we got to talk Star Wars at some point. We have to.
Yes.
And then real quick, I have to thank Rob. If you're still listening, what I'm about to say is a joke, but I'm almost close to being serious. I'm gonna start a show about The Warning. Rob,
dude,
they might be the best band of all time, dude. You know, they might be the best band.
When Gene Simmons says rock and roll is dead, I said these 3 girls from South America are gonna show you what rock and roll is still.
It's the only band I've listened to in 2 weeks.
I have not been more mesmerized.
Take it easy now.
Okay, the girls are pretty to look at, but then after a while you start going, holy crap, they're actually really good. They're a trio and they're blowing me away. But the bass player that I play with, he's like, I have a guilty pleasure. And I said, shut up if it's The Warning. He's like, dude, right?
It's not a guilty pleasure.
It's not a guilty pleasure.
No, anymore. Man. I am. If you're still listening and you don't know who The Warning is, go to YouTube and do The Warning Evolve VMA's performance.
That is,
and you will thank me, who will thank Rob. And anytime you want to thank me for that, you have to thank Rob, because dude, I have listened to no other band in the last 2 weeks than The Warning since getting to know them. We will be doing at some point a show for my dad to talk about his newfound love of the 1975. Talk about love for a front man. He loves himself some Matty Healy. I need to give him the platform to talk about that one day. So somebody please give him the opportunity.
Rick, do you know who they are?
No, I don't actually. I don't.
Okay.
I was about to start Googling now.
Very like
this is 1974.
An amalgam of like maybe Depeche Mode.
1975, yeah.
75, yeah.
In Excess, kind of all, that British kind of stuff like that, and we'll explain one day, because
and I love both those bands, by the way.
We got to do a thing too, Rob, what like new stuff that we found, like like where we're at now, because
that's great.
Everybody's either gone or they're almost done. So.
Right.
Yeah, it's sad.
In the meantime, you can follow me at Drummer Rob 10, all of my drumming and just random stuff. Hey, the wife and I went to Amish country and I found a Kiss record where I probably shouldn't have found a Kiss record, but I bought it anyway.
Rob, good food though, right?
Oh, great food. I
probably
gained
food.
500 pounds. Funny little story real quick. First time we were going to go Amish country, I just played along like I thought I knew what it was. We're on our way. And I was like, what are we going to do? Knock on some Amish person's front door and go, do you have cheese? She's like, no, it's a thing. It's a touristy thing. I'm like, oh, I thought we were really going to go to an Amish person's house and like you made a reservation. No, it's wonderful.
That's funny.
So that's where we're going to end this episode, folks. The conversation can go on, but thanks to our special guest, Rick Shew, for coming on. This was well in the making, and we got to have you back on, brother. So on behalf of Nick, Nico, and our special guest, Rick Shew, I'm Rob, and you've been listening to 4 Generations. We like Kiss, but just talking about rock and friggin' roll. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care, folks. Bye. 3, 2, 1.